3 beats of sustained sound. That is the goal. You could write 3 separate quarter notes and restrike the key 3 times, producing 3 distinct attacks 1 beat apart. Or you could write a single symbol that tells the performer to hold for all 3 beats at once, with only 1 attack at the start and a continuous sound through the second and third beats. Those are 2 completely different results even though the total duration is identical. The dot and the tie are the 2 ways notation solves that problem, and every other duration that the basic note shapes cannot reach on their own. Once you understand what each symbol does and when each one is required, rhythms that look complicated on the page become straightforward to read. Place a dot to the right of a note head and it adds exactly half of that note's value. Half note is 2 beats. Half of 2 is 1. Dotted half note, 2 plus 1 equals 3 beats. Count along with the click, 1, 2, 3. The note holds for every one of those 3 beats without a new attack. You can think of the dot as a multiplier. It makes every note 1.5 times as long as its undotted version. The rule is the same for every note value. Find the note's value, take half, add it back on. The dot never adds a fixed number of beats. It always adds half of whatever the note itself is worth. Now apply the same rule 1 level down. Quarter note is 1 beat. Half of 1 is a half. Dotted quarter note, 1 plus 1 half equals 1.5 beats. Hear it against the click, the note lands on the beat and holds past the halfway point of the next beat. That slight overreach past the halfway point is what makes dotted quarter rhythms feel like they push forward. The dotted quarter is one of the most common rhythmic figures in all of Western music, from folk songs to orchestral scores. You will find it in lullabies, in marches, in blues, and in jazz. Once you can feel the 1.5 beat duration against a steady pulse, you will recognize it instantly wherever it appears. Go 1 level further. Eighth note is half a beat. Half of half a beat is a quarter of a beat. Dotted eighth note, half plus a quarter equals 3/4 of a beat. It holds for 3 of the 4 16th note slots in 1 beat. In practice you will nearly always see a dotted eighth followed immediately by a single 16th note. Together those 2 fill exactly 1 beat, because 3/4 plus 1/4 is 4/4, which is the full beat. Hear that pairing now, dotted eighth, 16th, 1 complete beat. There is also a double dot, which adds half the original value and then half again of that amount. A double dotted half note is 2 plus 1 half, totaling 3.5 beats. Double dots appear occasionally, but the single dot covers the vast majority of cases you will meet. The dot exists because musicians needed those durations long before the dot was invented. The original solution was a tie, a curved line connecting 2 notes of the same pitch. Hold the first note, add the second note's length silently onto the first, no new key press, no new attack. Quarter note tied to an eighth note, 1 beat plus half a beat equals 1.5 beats, the same total as a dotted quarter. The dot is shorthand for the most common of those tied pairs. Whenever 2 notes of identical pitch are tied with no bar line between them, the dot replaces the tie and the notation becomes cleaner. The dotted quarter and the quarter tied to an eighth say exactly the same thing in 2 different symbols. The tie does more than just produce durations the dot can abbreviate. The tie joins any 2 notes of the same pitch, regardless of their values, and the combined duration does not need to be any standard note length. Half note tied to a dotted quarter, 2 beats plus 1.5 beats equals 3.5 beats. That total is not achievable with a single dot. There is no note value that lasts 3.5 beats on its own, so the tie is the only way to write it. You can also tie 3 or more notes together to build any duration you need. Hear this passage now, hold the first note through the tie and keep counting while the second note's length silently adds on. The attack is only at the beginning. After that the sound simply continues. There is exactly one situation where a tie is not just an option but the only option. A note that starts on one beat and must ring into the next bar cannot be written as a single note with a dot. The dot would push past the bar line, and notation does not allow a single note to cross that boundary. Instead, write the note at its starting beat, draw a tie, and write a second note at the beginning of the next bar. The ear hears one continuous, unbroken sound. The eye sees two note heads joined by a curve. That crossing of the bar line is the sole situation where the tie is absolutely required and no dot can substitute. Every piece of tonal music from Bach to the present day relies on this device to carry harmonies and melodies across bar lines without interruption. Ties also create syncopation. A syncopated rhythm places an accent on a beat or part of a beat that is normally weak. The most direct way to write syncopation is to start a note on an offbeat and tie it over the following strong beat. Hear this: rest on beat 1, strike on the an of 1, then tie that note over beat 2. The sound starts where the ear does not expect it and continues past the point where a new attack would normally land. The tie is what makes the accent stick to the offbeat instead of releasing when the strong beat arrives. Syncopation is built into virtually every style of popular music, and the tied note is the notation behind it. 2 common mistakes to avoid. First, writing a tie between two notes of different pitches. A tie only works between two notes of identical pitch. If the pitches differ, the curved line becomes a slur, a phrasing mark, not a duration extension. The visual symbol looks identical but the meaning is completely different. Read them differently and play them differently. Second, placing a dot where a tie is required. If a note must cross a bar line, reach for the tie, not the dot. Some students try to squeeze a dotted note across the bar line because the arithmetic seems to work out, but that is not valid notation. If the bar line falls inside the duration you need, split the note at the bar line and join the two halves with a tie. Read through a 2-bar passage that uses everything from this lesson. Bar 1, a dotted quarter note on beat 1 holds for 1.5 beats. An 8th note follows on the an of 2. Then a quarter note on beat 3. Bar 2 opens with a half note tied across the bar line into bar 3, where it resolves on beat 1. Count steadily through every beat, say the numbers aloud, and notice that every bar adds up to exactly 4 beats. The dots and ties shift where the attacks fall, but the total capacity of the bar never changes. That is what the bar line guarantees, the sum inside is always constant. When the count stays steady and the arithmetic adds up, you are reading the rhythm correctly. Dots and ties are the 2 tools that extend duration beyond what the basic note shapes can do alone. The dot is compact, one symbol, within a single bar, adding exactly half the note's value. The tie is flexible, any 2 pitches of the same note, any combined length, and crucially the only way to carry a sound across a bar line. Use the dot when the arithmetic lands cleanly within the bar. Use the tie when the duration crosses a boundary, combines unusual values, or needs to create syncopation. Next comes the triplet, 3 notes squeezed into the space of 2. Once you have that, the full rhythmic vocabulary of common music is in your hands.